So let's start with an introduction. What do each of you guys do for the Gold River Project?
I'll start. Vancouver Dave. Dave, you can call me. I am the co-founder and the lead artist and level designer. And
Wonderful.
Swiss Army knife. It's a small team. We all do a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Jess, you go next.
Okay, I'll go next. I am Jess. My handle is Kitty Cat Bones, so I'm either Jess or Kitty. I like both. And I'm fortunate enough to be the community manager for the Gold River Project. And then I also kind of dip into some storytelling on some of our social media, and also have been having a lot of fun doing a little bit of graphic design actually for our Kickstarter and website and socials and all of that fun stuff.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
My name's Craig. I think I'm Craigie at the time on Discord, as my family calls me. Co-founder with Dave. Take care of all the technical engineering side as well as the business side of things, and help Dave and Jess wherever I can with my crappy artistic eye.
He's not wrong.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that kind of opens up your roles to everybody, and hopefully that's going to help them understand a little bit more about what you do for the game.
Yeah. So if you're angry at the mechanics, just tweet out to
Blame
Craig.
me.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
It's all
so that's
Craig.
Craig's fault. Okay, so if something doesn't work, we blame Craig.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
don't talk to me.
Dave's
Or
art
me.
department. We joke about the art department and the engineering department, and then we each blame the other department, which is
Very healthy.
Okay. So the next question I'm going to jump onto is something that I'm sure a lot of people have been asking, and I'm sure it's a question you've had to answer quite a lot. But what is the actual premise of the Gold River Project?
The $1 million question. It's hard not to answer that question without going back to the beginning of where it all came from, but I don't want to spill too much. We can talk about that more later on, of the sort of where the story came from. But we really wanted to create something that was something that we held dear to our hearts, that all three of us love, and that was the sort of the creation of DayZ back in the day. When that came out, there was nothing else like it, and really changed the sort of the video games, I think, ever after that.
Yeah.
Having a concept where you're dropped on a beach and survive. That's your quest. So we love that. And then that obviously found its way to other games like Rust and so forth. And obviously Standalone came out. So we really wanted to create a game that had that sort of attraction, that kind of feel of you could go anywhere. There's no restrictions. There's none of this like on rails kind of thing. So really do the open world thing, but we wanted to go with a story, and that story sort of went back to the early days of the DayZ mods. So I think it was like Epoch or something like that, where you had these little missions that were really cool that you could you didn't have to do them, but if you did them, you got really cool loot out of it. And that really stuck with me. And it was one thing that I always had this idea of a camping game in the back of my head when it was in another studio, and started fiddling around with it as a single player game. And the one thing that was driving me nuts at the time, and this is the time of The Long Dark came out, was the love the game, but it was single player. And I was like, it'd be so great to play The Long Dark with friends, even if it's 4 friends, like The Forest, where you could go on an adventure and be like, oh my God, what's that thing in the corner? Or crafting stuff together. Because when you have friends to craft, it's so much quicker. So that's where it all sort of evolved right there. And then we can get to the story later on, how that came about. But yeah, the whole quest and the idea of it is that you are dropped into somewhere you think is absolutely amazing, and you quickly realize that it's not. And you got to get out, and you start finding through notes and interactions that what you are and where you are is pretty much a lab rat, and there's certain things you need to do to get through and get out.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's basically, there's no time limit on it. We are fiddling around with another version of the game if you wanted to do
another game mode,
more of a push, where there's a leak right away in the wall. So the temperature's dropping right away, which means you're still in summer clothing. You got to either find or craft warmer clothing before that wall completely comes down. The mechanic that we have in the game is that everything that you see is summer. As soon as that wall comes down, that area that you're in currently and what's on the other side of that wall will turn to fall, and so will the temperature drop, and it'll start raining, and it'll be cold, and if you're not prepared for it, you will start taking damage, and then that carries on into winter as well. And then after winter,
so the seasons are in essence part of the project. They're quite a big aspect of that.
Yeah, so this facility, the way it's set up is that they can actually control these walls and control the seasons, and they were doing all these experiments on so the animals and the plant life there, and then it sort of fell apart and then got re-energized and brought back by new management. And the idea was, let's try this on humans, but who's gonna do this willingly? And that's the sci-fi part of it, is sort of
awesome.
Bringing people in, whether it's an ad or something. And that we living in British Columbia, and I'm sure even Jess is in Oregon, myself and Craig are in Vancouver, and you see a lot of the backwoods sort of exploration, like, get helicopter dropped in, we'll come back and pick you up in a week, and it's like the most amazing scenery and waterfalls and blah 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 blah, and it's just there's kayaking and all that fun stuff. Sounds great, but what if that week comes by, and as you see in the story on Twitter, and no one comes back for you, and then you're sort of like, okay, we're running out of food because we only brought food for a week. And you start walking, and you're like, you don't know which way to walk, because if you ever looked on a map or anything and drop a pin on Google Maps in the middle of BC or the Cascades, all the way down to Washington and Oregon, it looks tiny, but when you get in there, you're like, where's north? Where do I go? So that's the premise. Yeah, it was just sort of this really sort of like taking a fantastic idea of going with a bunch of friends and having the best time, and we tried to really portray that in the video of cliff jumping, and everyone sitting on floaties and kayaks and having a great time and around the bonfire, and then all of a sudden no one comes for you, and you got to find a way out, and then you start realizing you're not the only ones that have been there.
That's awesome. I love the concept, and I really like that you guys mention you've just mentioned like quite a few games which I'm sure the community can kind of grasp onto as well, like the Forest, the Long Dark. All of these games have such a captivating and immersive experience. So like they do. It's really cool to hear about those.
Look up to those teams a lot. They're amazing, awesome how small they are and how well they've done.
Studios.
Truly.
So for anybody that doesn't know or wasn't able to pick that out from what we've just been talking about there, we're talking about a co-op or a single player experience, depending on how you want to play it. So something that came to my mind, and I'm sure other players will be asking about, is the map size itself. Is there anything right now that you're able to tell us about the map size?
Do you want me to take that one, guys?
You want to talk about Alpha, and you can also talk about the final game too.
Sure. So for the final game, the summer is going to be 2 by 2 kilometers, so 4 kilometers squared. Fall will be 6 by 6, so 36 kilometers squared. Winter will be 8 by 8, so 64 kilometers squared. So it's going to be quite a large map. And then what we're going to do, for alpha, for the alpha versions, the betas, we're going to do wedges of that. So say you'll still go all through summer, fall, winter, but it'll be like 10 or 20% wedge of that final map, just so we can keep those mechanics. Like for us, it's like we got to make sure our mechanics are tight. We know we already have the season. We've had the season mechanic working for the last year and a half, so that part is fine, but it's just everything else.
That's really good to hear as well. I've noticed from a lot of the footage we were seeing already, just the YouTube video and stuff like that, that some of the mechanics look like they're already working and implemented, which is a really promising thing to see this early on.
Well, it was important to us because what we had cooked up in our heads, we wanted to go, can we do this at a technical level? And so in our prototype, that's what we worked on. We're like, okay, well, we better make sure this is working. Otherwise, there's no point in going and doing anything else.
Yeah, I mean, when you have the idea in your head and then you go, okay, can we do this? And you have to sit down with your team and go, okay, can Unreal do this? And realize that it can't, and you actually have to start rewriting part of the engine to do that. But then you see it actually happen.
We are bending it to our will, which is nice.
It's always great to have ideas, but can you actually
Execute.
follow through?
Yeah.
And then
So
on
it was
Craig's-
important to us, and that was, like I said, that was a really important mechanic that we wanted to flush out early. And I think we even had that even when for the single player prototype. We had it in the very first prototype.
Yeah, we had made sure that worked right away because that was the key point of the game. And for us, watching the PUBG team come to life back in the early sort of alpha keys and beta keys, and seeing them at TwitchCon and so forth, is when that game was released. It was really, not to be mean, but it was pretty unpleasant on the eyes. But the mechanics worked. It struggled in some multiplayer stuff, but that's Unreal for you, and same with the physics. I mean, as the engine got better, that game got better. But one thing they did have out of the gate was their mechanics were pretty damn tight, and that was impressive. And I think that's what keeps people back. There's a lot of beautiful games out there that I'm sure we've all played, but we've gotten bored with in the first 5 minutes, because it's like, well, this is gorgeous, but it's either not great mechanically or it's just not fun. So we really want to make sure the fun's there and the mechanics are there first.
Yeah, definitely understand that. I think especially with the survival community, a lot of people will understand kind of where you're coming from on making sure that there's stuff for us to do, and also those things work before, you know, you think about expanding the map and stuff like that. And I mean, that's pretty. I'd like to say that's pretty commonplace for this kind of genre as well. Like, you know, starting with a smaller section of the map. So I don't think that's going to be a particularly big problem.
And it's not going to be that tiny. It's going to be still pretty big.
Yeah, exactly. I can't wait. I love the idea of the dynamic seasons and stuff. That's super cool. So I know this is the first game that the studio has worked on, and it's always exciting to see a studio's first project. But what kind of experience does your team have under their belts so far?
I can start. The studio that myself and Craig came from started with Unreal many years ago. So we have 6+ years with Unreal.
Yeah, 2015.
Yeah. So we've seen the really ugly wart side of Unreal, and the glory of, obviously, if anyone dev-wise is listening, is where Unreal 5 is going, and we cannot wait to get our hands on that, which will be the end of 2021, I believe, is the release for public. That's going to be phenomenal. But it's been a lot of growing pains, but a lot of good growing pains, because you're figuring it out, and as we spoke a little earlier too, just having the availability of the Epic team a couple of keystrokes away has been huge. When we've tried everything, we'll reach out to them, and they've been super helpful of like, oh, did you try this or try that? So having that long of experience and met a lot of that team in person, whether it's at TwitchCon or at any of the PAXs, GDCs, and it's great seeing those. That's one thing we obviously missed with COVID, is going to those conventions, obviously seeing friends and obviously seeing people in the industry as well, at different publishers and stuff like that, because everyone seems to really want to help one another. It's not a cutthroat industry that
very supportive
that we've come across yet, which has been great. And that's going up to the AAA studios all the way down to the indies. Everyone's really interested and genuine about what each other is doing and wants to help, which is just, I don't know if you see that in too many industries nowadays.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't think so. And perhaps something, the events kind of might come into my next question here, which is where you guys are in terms of growth and community. So what do you have going on right now in that sense, and where would you like to go in time?
Sure. We have a lot going on right now, actually super exciting. I'd say our we have 3 kind of main focuses. One obviously is Discord. We have been super lucky to have quite a nice community actually start growing there. And our main push is for pretty much drawing everyone to Discord. That's really where, so if you're listening to this, actually, if you're not in our Discord, we would absolutely love it if you would join it.
Excellent.
Well done. She's an expert. She could do my job for me.
How can I get you in a new Discord today?
Yeah.
Ignore
for everything in this interview except for please join our Discord.
Yes, and on a serious note, for those watching, it is going to be in the description of this video. So there you go.
Perfect. So yeah, Discord is our main focus, but because of that, that's kind of the head of everything. And then we have 2 main socials that we focus on pretty heavily that feed into Discord. One being our Twitter account. So that's a really fun place to kind of see what we're up to as well. This is definitely more of like a group thought process, but we've been loving it. We have come up with this really fun storyline, and I won't say because we're not at the end yet, but it's basically following a camper kind of in real time, as if they had just been dropped off, went through the experience of like realizing that they had to survive, they got trapped there, can't get their way out. And it's been a really fun way for us to show off the mechanics of the game, as well as kind of the story and lore behind it. So that's been something we've been doing, and we're going to potentially, like I said, I won't spoil it, but it will continue to kind of grow into what will hopefully be eventually multiple storylines, but we'll also kind of continue to reveal the development of the game as we progress. And that's been super fun. And then the other social that we kind of focus on pretty heavily as well is Instagram. And on Instagram, we focus more from kind of the scientist perspective, and like advertising the actual camping trip. So, come sign up for this once of a lifetime camping trip. These are the things that you'll find. This is why you should go there. And then Twitter's kind of like, what's that experience actually like as a camper / player of the game?
That's a pretty cool way of doing it. So those have been super
fun. Yeah, it's been a fun way to kind of show off, again, everything about the game, while also kind of getting to write storylines and things like that, which all three of us enjoy doing, and kind of do collectively too. So
that's awesome. And I know that personally I don't do Instagram. I probably should. I'm so bad at this sort of thing. But Twitter, I definitely do. And following that story on Twitter has been awesome. That's been like really good. And I love the way that like we're seeing like sneak peeks of different features and parts of the game through those images and the story attached to it. It's just such a simple way of doing it, but it really like helps drip feed that out to us and gets the hype going, I guess, which is ultimately, I assume, is what you guys are aiming for. So
yeah, that's right.
Awesome. Okay, thank you very much for that. So coming back to the premise of the game a little bit, what drove you to create the Gold River project? Where did that idea come from initially?
This is a two-parter. I'm gonna take the first half, and then I'm gonna pass the baton over to Craig, because it's a story that we've told many a time, and all 100% true, even though it is really wacky. So as I spoke earlier, when I was with the other studio and learning all this experience, obviously under Unreal and doing projects at home and stuff, and came up with this idea of this camping game that was pretty much on rails. It was sort of designed on this sort of almost like a Disneyland ride idea, where it's a super small map, but you had really tall sort of cliffs and stuff, so you couldn't see what's on the other side, and you kind of followed this river throughout. And I was talking to Craig, and I said, he's like, "Oh, what have you been working on?" And I was sort of showing him the game and stuff. And we were going for coffee, and we were just sort of discussing this sort of camping game and stuff like that. And so just having a coffee, and we started talking about university and things like that. And I was like, "Oh, what did you?" Because I think, Craig, you went to University Minnesota.
No, right? I did my first year in Minnesota, then I transferred back to UBC, so University of British Columbia.
So Craig says to me, "Well, I did," and this is where I passed the baton. So I got the camping idea, and it was going to be really simple, story-driven, single player. Right. But I wanted to do the multiplayer as well, because of obviously what we talked about with the long dark in the forest. So Craig says.
So I studied biology and then computer science at UBC, and I worked in a lab as a tech after graduating from UBC at UBC. And my boss, he did developmental biology, research and development biology, and he used starfish. And he had a contract with the Canadian Space Agency, and we were going to put starfish embryos up on the space shuttle with NASA. Wow. And we did it. It was an awesome experience. And Dr. Bruce Crawford, big shout out. He's a huge mentor. And what we had to do in order to make sure that we could, make our starfish embryos at any given time, is we controlled the light and the temperature of the water in the tanks that we had of them, because starfish, they will release their gametes based on sunlight and the warmth. As the ocean water warms up and there's more sunlight, that triggers them to go, oh, hey, it's time to make the little baby starfish. So we controlled the light and the water temperature, and that's how we were able to. Because we went down to NASA like 3 times to do, and then we finally went up on the space shuttle. And Mark Garneau, famous Canadian astronaut, he was our boy taking care of our starfish embryos. And
you're just dropping names left and right. Listen to you.
Yeah. And so it was an awesome experience. It was just such an incredible experience. And so I was telling Dave this story, and he's like, "Shut up." and then we go, "Oh, what if we applied that?"
The light bulb goes off and goes.
The light bulb.
A great idea.
And we're like, "Ooh, what if we did that? What if we, could fictionally control the weather and the temperature and see what, if we extrapolated that little that experiment to a much more bigger environment."
Yeah, and keeping things in perpetual seasons, and that's where the idea sort of sparked from there. I'm like, what if somebody, because once again, like I spoke about the Pacific Northwest, going from British Columbia all the way into Washington State and Oregon and parts of Northern California, you could be in there and never find your way out. It's so something like this on a grand scale could fairly easily be hidden from the rest of the world. I mean, today's technology, obviously, with satellites and Google always looking on me, it could be a little far-fetched. But I think the sci-fi is there for sure, because it was built so long ago, and something that maybe even the government itself was in cahoots with, so they would just black that out or mask it over. So that was where the idea came from, and I was like, they did some crazy stuff in the 60s, so this would be such a great storyline. So I started writing up the story and working with Craig on it, and we're like, yeah, and what the facility would look like. So that's one thing that we carried through in the design of the game, is that you'll notice a lot of the main structures. So when they purchased this parcel of land to do this, there was a few towns that ran through this property, so it was very common that you'll see in Pacific Northwest, because mining was a huge thing that happened here that sort of brought people here, and how this part of the world sort of was raised up. Towns sprout up and disappeared, and so this facility, when they came in, they just kind of bought out whatever town was left of 50 people and said, we're going to relocate you, we're going to do some mining here, and not really telling them what's going on. Right. And setting up this facility and these labs and these walls, and just sort of everything that was left there is just left there. So it's not an apocalyptic. Nope, can't get that word out. Try again. Apocalyptic. Thank you. There you go. I need another coffee.
We truly are a team supporting.
So it's not that. Yeah, it's not that sort of based on like a Last of Us or a zombie kind of game where everything is run down. It's still being maintained to a degree, and there's quite a few towns that are still around in that were around when there was mining in BC that have been maintained by the government or by people that bought them. And so
historians.
There's some really cool towns I can link you later that are just like absolutely in a time capsule from the 50s and 60s that are still there. Nobody lives there, but like the houses are like still maintained. The grocery store is still there, no food in it, but if you walked by it, it's clean. There's no ivy growing. Like, it's very well kept. And that was the idea of this, is keeping that kind of part of it very sort of together. But there's also still things like old mines and stuff that would have just been left alone when they bought this parcel of land and sort of sealed it up and just, we'll maintain it, but it is what it is, kind of thing. So that was the premise. So when you do find the substations, which is what we talked about, and the substations power the wall, the labs control the wall. They're very much 1960s. The lab itself is a sort of a fall on architecture that we see at our university. I'm trying to think of the architecture type. Craig, can you pop in? But SFU is...
the Arthur Erickson?
Yeah, that kind of, we can look that up. It's that kind of very sort of lot of concrete, very cold looking, almost not sort of Eastern European, but just has a very sort of, it's just cement. So it's just
dull gray.
It's just dull, yeah. And it's what worked, and what's a reason for a lot of that, especially in this part of the world. is that it rains a lot, so everything had to be lots of concrete and cold, and you have to kind of build your structures back then like a ship because there was so much water. So yeah, that's the story behind it, and then within it we wanted to keep it that kind of 60s feel.
And Gold River is an actual town on Vancouver Island where I grew up.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that.
And
There's
if
no
you
there.
yeah.
So I'm no expert, but I think as far as developer stories go, that's probably a pretty weird one. That's a pretty wild one, I think. I'm not sure. Like I say, I've not done many developer interviews, only with 2 games now, but I mean, that's definitely the weirdest one I've had so far. So
it
that's
was
awesome.
definitely the light bulb moment of like, because we're fans obviously of like shows like Lost and things of the sci-fi genre that's a sort of, but also takes place in reality. So it was really, it was just the light bulb moment for us.
Awesome. That's really cool to hear about. Thank you very much for that. So, we've kind of touched on the map size already, and I think one of the big things that comes with the map and the map design, and especially with games like this, as I'm sure you'll probably mention in a moment, is the transportation. With Gold River, tell me a little bit more about what kind of transportation methods the player will have.
Sure. Do you want me to take that?
Yeah, I'll do a little intro. For me, going back to those early games, and I'm sure Jess and Craig can jump in as well, is you find it can be a running simulator at times, and it's like so we wanted to make sure that not to take anything away from those games, and there's reasons for that, but we wanted to make sure there was some sort of transportation, whether it's human power like a kayak, or you have to find gasoline or what have you to get the outboard mode running on a boat or so forth. But we wanted to make sure we had those options, and the things I wouldn't do right now to get a little bird back in DayZ, I'll tell you. But anyway, I'll leave it off to Craig on that one.
One that you can survive actually using. That would be good.
Right. Right. So we for summer, because it's a smaller map, what we're doing is we're keeping it to a kayak, which is a single person. We are going to have like a 2-player outboard, and then a 4-player outboard wooden boat. So it'll be slow and heavy.
Okay.
But it will carry all 4 of you. It's going to be loud. That's the thing. So you may not want to be loud, depending on where you are.
Interesting. So we have to take into account audio and how much of a profile we're giving off there too.
Exactly. And we can get into that a little bit further down. So that's the summer, and then for fall, because really, if it's 36 square kilometers, that's a lot. And we were like, well, because we don't want to turn a running simulator, we have to give the player something. So that's when we're going with the enduro bikes. So then they can still get around the map faster. Again, they're going to be loud, so you have to be careful. In winter, we're going to go with snowmobiles.
Awesome.
And I'm super excited about these. Probably one and two person snowmobiles. Again, you're going to need gas for those. And they're going to be snowmobiles from like the late 60s, early 70s. So they're not going to be that comfortable to ride, but not pretty to look at, but she'll get you where you're going. So.
So I mean, we have a lot of options then so far.
Yes. And then we can I talk about the last one? Oh, actually, we actually put that as a on Kickstarter, the gyrocopter. So
yes, I did see that one.
Very excited about this because it was so much fun in DayZ. So we're like, oh my god, we gotta have one. Yeah. And it's gonna be the biggest piece of crap gyrocopter every time that you can imagine.
Okay, I'm
excited about that one.
I'm there for it. I'm especially excited myself about the enduro bike. That sounds awesome. I can't wait to give that thing a whirl. Gyrocopter is definitely interesting. I love the idea of flying around in this really
blue
janky.
loud? Is this going to be you're worried that you're going to die in a moment's notice in that thing?
I mean, that was always the thing of going back to DayZ. That was always the thing of DayZ. If you ever got your hands on a helicopter, it was sure you can fly it, but when you land, somebody's gonna hear you.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Okay, thank you very much for that as well. Now we mentioned Kickstarter there just briefly, but on the Kickstarter, we've seen a very brief depiction of the base building system and some crafting as well. What kind of structures can we build, and how will it help us survive?
Yeah, I can take that. You can build whatever you would like if you can get the material to build it. So there will be, it's not something that you can build off the bat. It will be a blueprint that you'll have to either obtain. I don't want to spoil anything, or you come across, and then from that learning, you'll be able to build pretty much anything you want. And the reason for that is you start in the middle of this map in that 2 square kilometers, and then that 2 square becomes that 6, and now all of that is fall, and then that 6 becomes the 8 square, and that's all winter. Now you are moving outwards in a direction that's not a linear direction. It could be zigzag, it could be whatever. However you are finding either the substations or interacting with the lab, and there's a lab per season to bring these wall down and move on. Is the trick is that you may, as you're moving out, you may have to traverse back the way you came from, and not in the sense of a double back like you would do in a lot of linear games and single player games where it's like, oh, you got to go all the way back to the castle and get that again, and like, I hate backtracking. And then that's why they introduce things like fast travel. This is more so that if you've worked from center out in a sort of a zigzag, and you discover through a note or a map that one of the substations that you need to get to, or lab or whatever that is you need to interact with, is on the other side, or at least in a certain direction and a certain location, traversing that, it would be great to have the player not only put a tent down, but small spoiler, tents and things like that are not going to stick around if you leave it there and come back. Some of them may not. It's very random if wildlife could go through it.
That's an interesting concept.
Settlers could go through it, and then you're like, well, it's torn down, it's just left as rubble, or there's nothing left there.
There goes my supply stash.
Yeah. So if you can be smart enough and go, okay, I'm going to kind of find center-ish where I am right now and set up a sort of cabin in the woods idea where you leave some supplies that you can do without for right now, that you may need later on to get through all of winter, because it's going to be bitter cold. Pretty much all the lakes that were around in summer and fall are now frozen over. It's quite a big map. So the idea is doing something that's a little more stable that you can lock, and you can kind of put all the things that you may need along the way. And it goes, and that's a throwback obviously to sort of the DayZ mod days of I can't remember if it was Epoch again, where you could have little storage areas and stuff and leave things for people, and then or the idea of when you died, your body was only there for X amount of time. It's like, okay, run back to your body, get your things, and then carry on. So it was an idea of how do we kind of do the long play of, like, if you're traversing all this and food becomes more and more scarce, because hunting in the winter is going to become a little more scarce because of obvious season reasons. Putting food there and clothing and stuff that's going to help you.
And I love that concept too, because when it comes to base building in games, sometimes it's not very progressive. There's not really much reason to do anything else than just build yourself, say, a small one block, shack in the woods. But I really like that you guys have thought about like this tent system as well, and how it might not be the best option for permanency, but can be in terms of short duration. It'll keep you alive for the night, if you need a fire or something like that, but you will have to progress and find these blueprints to help you survive, and then obviously build your proper cabin in the woods, like you said. And that's really nice, because like progression is one of my big things. Is I love to see progression in games like this, and also it keeps you playing, right? It keeps you playing, it keeps you driving onto a new goal and something, and I feel like a lot of players love that. Okay, I've got this in my head, this is what I need next, now I just got to go out there and find it. And having all these things to look out for, which is really cool. So
Yeah.
that sounds really interesting.
Just remember where you put it.
Yeah. So kind of along those lines is crafting as well, and I guess we've touched on it slightly there in terms of base building, but how important is crafting going to be for survival of the player and their group?
It's going to be pretty damn important. When Craig and I talked about this, and that this is a sealed off location, so this is something that you're not the first one in this experiment. Other people have already sort of been dropped in it, and they may or may have not have gone to abandoned towns or certain locations and rifled through stuff, or been able to find keys to unlock certain doors to get into certain offices or what have you, and realize there's, for instance, we have a small train yard where supplies were dropped off, and it still is in use for the lab, so they're getting things in and out of there, but it's under lock and key. But if you can get in there, you'll be able to find sort of your standard food, your standard clothing, and things like that. But if you can't find that, you're going to have to craft a lot of that stuff and hunt a lot of that stuff. So it's the main objective in this goal is to get out, but to get out, you got to go through winter. So so you got to either find that warm clothing or craft it. So it's going to be very important. Yeah. That's
really cool. We've talked a lot about the survival and the seasons and how we get through that to finally escape, but what kind of other challenges are we going to have to face within the experiment, and what kind of hostile AI are going to be around?
You want me to take that?
Yeah, you're the AI, you're engineer, go for it.
Oh, okay. So as we say in the Kickstarter, right, there's three factions. And I would say the middle group, we'll call them, they will leave you alone if you leave them alone. So their aggression is sort of, they're more on the defense, but they will act aggressively if you try to bug them, infiltrate their camp or something like that, and found out. The guys, the third faction, very aggressive, like shoot first, ask questions later kind of thing. Like they are, you will have to be very stealthy to deal with those guys.
Okay, interesting. I like the idea already, and I think this is going to be definitely something more than just surviving the seasons themselves.
Yeah, and we're working on another. Can I talk about the other mechanic, Dave? With
the first
settlers first. Yeah,
you can touch a little on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basically,
I want to leave
things,
something for the players. Okay,
I know. Yeah, I know. So one of the things is we call it the empathy chest, where
compassion box or something like that. Yeah.
Compassion box or something, right? Where it's like, look, if they need something from you, you need something from them, and you leave something in the chest for them, you come back the next day, they leave something for you that you need, kind of thing. So we're working on this. We're working on kind of, it's still early days on that mechanic, but we thought it would be something where it's not just kill everything. And that to be, and basically there are settlers there that can help you.
Well, everybody's just an ordinary person at the end of the day, right? Like, we're not like in this, like you say, we're not in a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah, no.
And at the end of the day, I guess that the world is still out there. Everything's not gone completely down the drain,
right.
And people are going to want to try and work together in at least some places, right?
And in some extent, we find that doing some research, and we kind of feel that there's two sets of people, of the campers that have sort of come in and can't get out. Either they couldn't get out because they couldn't figure it, or they didn't want to get out. They realized once they're in there long enough, it's that sort of, this isn't so bad. start living off the land. I don't have to go back to my 9-to-5 job. I really have no one to go back to. This is not the worst thing in the world. I mean, it's pretty gorgeous and it's pretty amazing.
Or
the other hand
event,
of that, the other hand of that is the people that are just there because they can't get out and they're sort of almost broken. And then you have the third faction, which Craig was talking about, which is the super hostile one, that some of them are actually working with the scientists and are definitely not there to help you whatsoever, and don't want to see the seasons change because they've set up their life there, they've set up their farming and everything, and you're going to ruin that by changing the seasons. So there's a lot of people that don't want you to leave.
So yeah, there's a big kind of like power dynamic going on in that sense, I guess. Like, you know, you could ruin everything for one faction just by making your escape, which
now, that being said, you don't have to, for the people, because I know there's a lot of people, including my brother, who helped us out on this, who's a fantastic artist, that he will play DayZ and he'll go to the top of Chernarus and just set up a farm and work and live up there and just be in peace. But he'll see people come through and sort of, you know, watch them, and if he has to take a shot, he'll take a shot. But he really enjoys sort of, and the same with in Scum as well, as working with his friends and building bases, and they just really enjoy that side of it. And Jess has jumped in there as well and finding ingredients to make a stew and really enjoys that part of the game. So you don't have to deal with these factions. You can actually, if you see smoke in the distance, you obviously know there's a camp there, you can go around it, you can get eyes on it maybe with your scope or with binoculars, but you don't have to. At the end of the day, you don't have to deal with any of them. You just need to find these.
If you want to stay in summer or you want to stay in fall, like if you enjoy the fall leaves and everything, you don't have to. You can just play the game and
just survive, right?
Yeah, just survive and just enjoy the scenery and just work on
explore. There's lots to explore. There's
lots to explore.
Secrets.
And I guess that comes around to. That comes around to that whole thing that you've got a story there, but you know it has come from these open world games, and you want it to be survival open world, and that is what it is.
And go at your own pace,
exactly. And just because you've got a story doesn't mean that you can't do both. So
correct.
So one last thing, so perhaps not like the biggest concern of everyone, but it was something that caught my eye, which was the achievement system and how this worked. And we've seen a couple of teasers on the Discord about this as well. Can you tell us how this works?
This is a work in progress, so anything we say obviously could change. Of course, with all of this. One thing that really stood out to me, and it's sort of the first thing that pops in my head right now, is when Astroneer came out. I really loved how they put everything on your backpack when you're in space, so you saw exactly everything you're collecting and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, that is really cool. And so I was talking to Craig, and I was like, what if we did like Boy Scout, Girl Scout badges? So whatever you achieved, and we'll get into the tech tree in a sec, but whatever you achieved or whatever you earned, we could do that as a Steam achievement, so that would pop up. But also you would have that on your backpack, and that is something that you could carry on through games. So you could work your sort of way up if you got really good at crafting fires or even starting fires quickly or what have you. Really good at what the proper term is, boating, but very good at kayaking or getting a kayaker. Yeah, and you just get those sort of badges, and I thought it'd be great to have those as you achieve them on your backpack. So you kind of show it up. You see yourself, but also show off to your friends, like, oh, what do you have on your back, and what did you get, and really just sort of start decorating the back of the backpack almost like a high school backpack as well, with badges and different bands that you love and things like that.
Sure.
So that kind of idea was like, that'd be really cool, and I think that would also set us apart from a lot of how do you dealing with publishers and things like that. They always want to know, how are you different, how are you unique, what is your character, like your main character, and how is that different than DayZ or Scum or what have you.
As long as I can flex to my friends that I make fires better than them, that's great. That's
all
I care about. So
and then the tech tree itself is a work in progress, because it's quite tricky, because there's tech trees that we love all the way back to things like Ratchet and Clank and Fallen Order and things like that.
I love the Fallen Order tech tree.
super simple tech trees that graduate, but we're also working in a multiplayer world. So it's how do we balance the single player and the multiplayer? So if you wanted to play a 4-person free for all, where you play for your friends but you're all against each other, and working your way out, and we talked about earlier doing that sort of speed round where there's a leak in the wall and the temperature's dropping every few minutes, so it's that push to really go through this game quickly, or quicker than you normally would. Making sure that's balanced, so you're not coming in with someone who's like their backpack is like there's badges falling off of it because they have so many. That it's fun to play with your friends. So we're working on that. There may have to be 2, like a single player and a multiplayer kind of thing, and figuring how that works. But it's still something that we're mulling about, and obviously looking at all of our favorite games on how they did it on a multiplayer sort of grasp. But it's definitely something where you will like if you're an expert hunter, you get better aim, you're much better at your weapon, things like that. Even awesome. Fixing your weapon and crafting benches,
tracker, navigator,
yeah.
Great. Okay, so I think this interview has definitely helped us get more of a clear idea of what you guys are planning, and some of the more, I guess, fine-tuned mechanics that are going into the Gold River project. Just before we close up and finish, I do like to do this one just kind of at the end. Are there any messages that you would like to give out to the community, to the people that are interested in the Gold River project?
That's a great question.
That is a good one.
I'm putting you on the spot, I know.
Yeah.
Join our Discord.
Thank you.
Yes, join the Discord.
Thank you.
We've had such amazing support from a lot of vastness in the community, from people that are wanting to play, to people that like yourself are content creators, to even outside of that as well. And we've just felt super overwhelmed. So I think the first thing we would want to say is just thanks. The support means a lot. And we love to see how excited everybody is. And it's nice to be working on something and have people match that same kind of excitement. So I guess that's my message. I don't know.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I think just sticking out in my head right now, I don't know if we talked about this just before the interview or if this was in the interview, having content creators like yourself do a video on what we've released and get it right away is fantastic, because that just reassures the developer that you're doing the right thing and it makes sense. Because when you are working on anything, whether it's an album or a book or what have you, you get blinders on, you get very close to it, so it's almost hard to see the trees through the forest. So you're so immersed. So to see other people see it for the first time, be interested and get it is fantastic. So that's and the other thing is just seeing the social media. It's been amazing seeing people hitting the Kickstarter and getting multiple keys and be like, I can't wait to go camping with my friends. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And you see all the little gifts about
so
camping
cool.
and camping going wrong and stuff like that. And working with people that I've known for a while in the community, just to give us heads up. Chris Sacril was really generous to throw out let people know what we're doing, and working with people like Retzi, who's crafting the figurines for the Kickstarter. That are absolutely amazing. These are 8-inch,
so amazing,
massive figurines of not only settlers but the camper as well. So she's putting those together, and we're gonna have some images coming up very shortly on Discord. So yeah, I'm just
hopefully
happy
in
with
our next update.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So just to round this off, if anybody watching this is interested in the Gold River project, obviously, as we've mentioned multiple times now, your Discord, best place to be. Link in the description.
Yeah, let's keep it all under one roof and come and say hi. We're here to answer any questions you may have.
And of course, if anybody is interested in backing the Gold River project, that's available on Kickstarter, which is also in the description of this video as well. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to sit down and talk us through the game.
Thank you.
We're
excited to share it.
Thanks
very much.
Yeah, very excited.